Hello, and welcome to Bedrock Wisdom, a show in which we seek to understand the many ideas, religious and secular, that unite us. I am your host, Tyler. This is episode 5, Meditation and Prayer. I would like it if you would indulge me for just a minute or two here. If you are in a position to do so, go ahead and close your eyes. Obviously, if you're driving, please leave your eyes open. You can still do this even if just mentally. All right. Now, I want you to bring awareness to your right hand. Notice each finger of the right hand. Now, touch your thumb to your index finger. Now touch your thumb to your middle finger. Now touch it to your fourth finger. Touch it to your pinky finger. Now move your thumb back to your fourth finger. Back to the middle finger. And back to your index finger. Now relax the hand, relax the fingers, and notice your left hand. Now I want you to touch the left thumb to the index finger, thumb to the middle finger, thumb to the fourth finger, thumb to the pinky. Now move your thumb back to the fourth finger, back to the middle finger, and then I want you to touch the index finger. Relax the hand, relax the fingers. Okay, we're done. What you just did was a form of meditation. You could call it awareness meditation or something similar to that, but that was a meditation. Now, the National Center for, The National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, also known as the NIH, I can understand why. They reported in 2017 that according to a survey at the time, U.S. adults' use of meditation in the past 12 months had tripled between 2012 and 2017. The use of meditation by U.S. children also increased significantly from 0.6% to 5.4%. So, yeah. What's that like? 5 times at least, or 9 times. According to the NIH, most forms of meditation include 4 factors. Now, this is most. So if you're into meditation, or if this is, kind of your wheelhouse at all, you don't need to correct me. You can if you want, of course, but so anyways, most forms of meditation, according to the NIH, include these 4 factors. 1, a quiet location with as few distractions as possible. 2, a comfortable posture. That could be sitting, lying down, walking, or, other positions. Now, obviously, yoga is its own thing, but yoga is a form of meditation as well. So, number 3 is a focus of attention. Now, that focus of attention can be on a chosen word or set of words, an object, or the sensation of breathing, the in-breath, the out-breath, for example. And then number 4, an open attitude. This is very important. So when we say open attitude, it means letting distractions come and go naturally without judgment. Meditation, I have personally been employing a more formalized version, I guess you could say, of meditation. Maybe that's not the right way to put it, but, sitting meditation, calm, focusing on the breath, those types of things. I have been implementing that just in the last few years of my life, and I have found it particularly helpful for me. Kind of helps me find a center, and kind of go into the reasons why that is the case. Not necessarily just for me, but in general. So many religious traditions, this is something I hadn't really sat down and thought much about until I was writing up some ideas for this, but many religious traditions, they do a lot of these same things, but they call it prayer. Obviously, there are certain things about prayer that don't necessarily fall into those 4 things listed by the NIH, but so many of the aspects of them too. So I thought it'd be important to kind of discuss those just a little bit. I thought about it, in many of the religious origin stories, if you just go to the origin of any of the major religions, most of them, if not all, they start with the primary figure praying or meditating. So, for example, the Buddha, probably the most obvious one, but the Buddha, or Siddhartha Gautama, was the name associated with this figure. After having spent several unsuccessful years seeking enlightenment, in many different ways, followed a lot of different types of religious ideas, seeking enlightenment, no success. For several years, he finally decided, when he was in the shade of a Bodhi tree, that he was going to sit down and he was going to meditate. And he wasn't going to leave until he found enlightenment. And it was during this time when he, according to the story, discovered how to reach enlightenment. The Dhamma, the teachings of the Buddha, as they are referred to. Okay, Moses. Anyone familiar with the story of the 10 Commandments? You know who Moses is. Moses, and I'll just explain maybe a little more. He's a prophet of the Old Testament, or the Torah. So basically, he was a Jewish prophet, which also means the Christians recognize him, and I believe the Muslim community also recognizes him. But Moses went into the mountains to commune with God, quote unquote, commune with God. And it was while he was there that, according to the scripture, he received the 10 Commandments. Another example, Jesus went into the wilderness around his 30th year of age and fasted for, as the Bible says, 40 days. It's a long time. And that, take that literal or not, but 40 days. He went in the wilderness and fasted for an extended period of time. And throughout this experience, he's faced with multiple temptations. First and most obvious is the temptation to eat. Just break your fast. Just be done. This is too hard. Right? But he's also tempted, and the Bible explains this in very specific ways. The devil took him up to the top of a tower and said, "Jump," and so that the angels will say, so you can prove how great you are, basically. So you might see that as he was tempted to brag or have some kind of self-aggrandizement, like, oh, look how strong I am, or look how special I am, right? And then the third temptation was, devil says, Jesus, come on, you're Jesus. You could rule over all these nations. It takes him up onto a spire or something to see all the nations of the world. So I see this as like a temptation to gain power. And I think this is I won't go off too much on the side note. We could come back to this if we want, but of a religious leader, right, to to kind of take on that role of somebody uber special and, seeking worship almost and power. And we see a lot of religious people who, unfortunately, not all of them, many of them don't. I want to emphasize that very strongly. Many of them don't, but sometimes we hear of those that do give in to that influence and power. So anyways, this marks the beginning of Jesus's ministry. Goes into the wilderness, fasts for 40 days, resists these temptations, and upon returning, he begins his ministry. And then just a fourth example, Muhammad, the Islamic prophet, he would spend much of his time going into the mountains to meditate. And it was during one of these meditation retreats, you might call it, that he, according to the Quran, was visited by an angel and received inspiration. Basically, he received understanding of things he needed to teach the people. But either way, you look at it, he went to the mountains to meditate, and that was the beginning of his ministry. So meditation comes up, obviously, very significantly in, religious belief systems, but not using that word most of the time. But I think if you were paying any attention, we're seeing how meditation really is being recognized as a very useful tool for mental health. Now, meditation and prayer. So I'm just going to say meditation from now on, but prayer, falls into this category for the most part. Can take on many different forms. Person might be kneeling and bowing, holding their palms together, folding their arms, sitting with legs crossed, yoga poses, as I hinted towards before. Eyes might be closed. They might chant. They might recite mantras, which, is kind of saying something specific over and over again. They might recite affirmations. They might sit in complete silence. Or you might have a group of people saying things in unison with one kind of leading it. Or it might be, a very, person all alone doing this. There's a lot of different forms, right? At the heart of this, despite all these different forms, at the heart of meditation, it's the idea that if we allow our mind to exist in a purely reactionary and self-interested, or one might say an ego-driven state, then we and others around us are in for a lot of pain and suffering. Humans, and this is hard sometimes for our ego to accept, but we aren't as rational as we like to think we are. Now, while there are differences sometimes between different prayer and meditation forms, what they all have in common are the things that I mentioned before. They take the participant and out of the usual rhythms of life and thought and into a separate situation with an external point of focus. Secular meditation, non-religious meditation practices, they do the same thing. And we might see this in religious practices as somebody watching from the outside, and nobody belongs to every religion. So I think we can all, if we've paid any attention, kind of empathize with this feeling. Sometimes it just looks odd, just weird, It's like, oh, why do they all stop and face the same direction at the same time? Or why do they repeat these things over and over again together? It can strike us as odd. And if you're not inside of that practice, you don't really get it, right? And sometimes if you are inside, and I can say this for myself, sometimes if you are inside, you still might not get it. But I will also say, as somebody that grew up in the traditional form of a Christian prayer, it did not strike me as odd. Because that was, that was what that was the water into which I was born. Or I think of, fish in a water bowl. They don't know what water is. That's just where they are. Um, Anyways, I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but they might seem odd. But the point I'm trying to make is they have patterns, and not just the religious ones. The secular ones is too. The secular ones do too, as I have mentioned. And I think they can be so beneficial to so many people, despite what the exact form of it is. Now, life can become very overwhelming very quickly. And unfortunately, many of us have the mistaken belief or idea that the only solution to our problems is something that requires us to alter our surrounding circumstances. That might be, we might think we need to change a relationship either by changing the person or cutting people loose or, convincing other people to come into our, life, or trying to change the people that are already in our life, trying to change their worldview so that it matches with the way we see things. We might fall into the if only trap, the quote, if only trap. For example, if only they could understand the truth as I see it. But we don't say as I see it, right? If only they could understand the truth, because I do. Or if only I could convince that person to love me, my life would just be great. Or if only I could get the right job, if only I could get the right house, if only I could live in the right city, if only I these people were my friends, on and on and on, then I will be happy. But the truth of the matter is that while we can change some things, so much of what causes us pain or anxiety or fear has more to do with our state of mind than it does with the circumstances of our situation. Now, I want to be very clear when I say this. This does not mean that we should stay in bad relationships or bad situations, or I might insert abusive relationships or situations. If you are in an abusive situation, look for a way out. That being said, what I am trying to say here is that it is so important that we train our mind to be able to determine where the line is between the way things are and the way we are reacting to the way things are, because there's a difference. It's a very important difference. And unfortunately, many times we can get into that trap where we think, oh, we're just completely along for this ride. We're jerked around. We have no choice. But we do have a choice. We choose how to react to a situation. Nobody can make that choice for us. So I would encourage you to maybe look into the different types of meditative approaches that are out there. Find some kind of practice that helps you to cultivate this skill. Look for a way to kind of separate yourself from the forces of the world around you and find a way to, just improve your mental well-being and see what you are doing that might affect the way you are experiencing different situations in your life. There's a lot of different approaches. We've talked about prayer, which works for certain people, but not everybody. We did the awareness meditation at the beginning, just kind of stopping and paying attention to your body paying attention to yourself, and maybe kind of getting that brief separation from what's going on around you to what's going on right here, right now. There's metta meditation, which is a way of sitting and thinking about just contemplating your well-being, just wishing yourself peace and, joy and health, but then often these meditative practices, you'll then move to another person, somebody that's close to you that you care for, somebody that's neutral, and somebody that you have a hard time with. And that's not for everybody to jump into right away. That can take some time to work on, but it can be very beneficial, even if you just start with, if you have a bad relationship with yourself, starting with a practice for yourself. There are Zazen practices, or the Zazen practice, which is in Zen Buddhism, which is essentially you just sit. That's it. You sit. You recognize thoughts. You don't force yourself to not think about anything. You just sit. And when the thoughts come, you recognize them. You, as Thich Nhat Hanh, the Zen teacher, says, you smile at them. And then you watch them go away. This is a good practice. This is one I'm particularly fond of because it helps you to not get into reactive or jerk reactions, right? Or knee-jerk reactions, I guess that's the word. You kind of teach your mind to recognize things, recognize your emotional reaction to them before you allow any other kind of reaction to come into place. Because I don't know about you, but I know there's lots of times where I've done things and immediately afterwards I regretted it. And in many of those cases, had I actually just taken a moment, I would have not said the thing I did. Anyways, there's a lot of different approaches. Some of them is just sitting with, some kind of a calm music or, sounds of birds chirping or whatever it is. There's just a lot of different ways you can do it. But I would encourage you to look into that and find something that works well for you. And take care of yourself. And that's what I have. I want to thank you for listening, and I will catch up with you next time. Bye.